Hello everyone and welcome to Kurog Grimtotem. This fight is super complex and has a lot of moving parts, so in this video I'm going to explain how the fight works. All the following footage is taken from my live stream, so let's jump into it. The boss's area is split into 4 sections. There's a storm altar, fire altar, earth altar, and frost altar. Depending on which section he is in, he will gain different abilities. But let's go over his base abilities first. Elemental Surge is the I'm not next to a totem, so I'm gonna wipe the raid mechanic, so you gotta make sure he's next to a totem. Sundering Strike is this frontal cone. It is a tank mechanic that will follow the main tank around, so tanks make sure to face that away from the group. And while the visual effect changes for every altar, what it actually does remains the same for every altar. Elemental Shift makes everyone take damage when he transitions to an altar, and prevents you from switching between altars too soon with the Primal Break debuff. Each altar has an ability that gives the boss a buff that increases all damage from that altar's abilities by 5% per stack. This fight will be a balancing game of managing how many stacks of the buff the boss has. First up, here's what the Storm altar looks like. Lightning Crash is a dot that is going to be placed on random players. Healers need to spot heal this. Shocking Burst is a big circle placed on random players. They should make sure no one is in their circle. Thunderstrike spawns several circles on the ground. Each circle must be absorbed by a player, or else the raid will take deadly damage. Players that have the Lightning Crash debuff though should not take this, as they will 100% die. And it does deal significant damage to the player absorbing it, so they should definitely use a defensive. Thunderstrike is the spell that grants Kurog a buff of Thundering Dominance whenever it is cast. Now the raid group is heading into the Earth Altar space. This large circle is erupting bedrock. Get out of it or you'll take a ton of damage and get knocked back. Enveloping Earth is a healing absorb shield placed on random players. Healers are going to have a fun time with this one. These giant swirls are a seismic rupture. Anyone in them when they go off takes deadly nature damage and gets knocked back. Every time he does this cast, he gains a buff of Shattering Dominance. Additionally, Earthbreakers will spawn at the swirl locations. Earthbreakers inflict a debuff called Skeletal Fractures to their main target, which increases all physical damage taken by 6% per stack. This is the Frost altar. Biting Chill is a cast, and at the end of it, it puts a debuff on the entire raid, dealing damage for 10 seconds. Frigid Torrent spawns these icy projectiles that will shoot out from the boss, and if they hit anyone, they will stun them and deal massive frost damage. This is a magic effect and can be dispelled. Absolute Zero places large frost circles around random players. This inflicts deadly damage if other people do not stack in this circle, as the damage is split among all players within it. Every cast of Absolute Zero gives Kurog a stack of Chilling Dominance. All players hit by Absolute Zero gain Frostbite, which is a dot that lasts 30 seconds, dealing frost damage. If you get 2 or more stacks of Frostbite, you become frozen solid, and this cannot be immunitied out of. It does not care. This is the Fire altar. The boss puts Searing Carnage on random players. What this does is it marks their location every second, and then after 1.5 seconds the marked location explodes, dealing deadly fire damage to any players in the swirls. In addition, the player who has the dot on them will take fire damage for 5 seconds. Every time he casts Searing Carnage, he gains a stack of Blistering Dominance. This is Magma Burst. Kurog will throw magma at random players, dealing heavy fire damage when they land, and puts a dot on any players that get hit by it that lasts 10 seconds. Additionally, a lava pool will form where the magma landed, and anyone who stands in this lava pool will take fire damage every second. This can quickly take up the encounter space. This ability unleashes waves of lava in a pattern towards random players, and inflicts massive fire damage to anyone who stands in it. Those are all the altars covered, but guess what? There's also an intermission too. The first intermission happens at 66% health. I'm not sure when the second intermission happens, but probably around some kind of health percentage. Primal Barrier is put on Kurog when intermission starts, reducing all damage taken by 99%. Now Kurog is going to summon 2 of 4 potential adds. The adds he summons depends on which altars you have taken him to. Each elemental has a buff that stacks every 10 seconds. When the elemental is killed, all stacks of this buff are transferred to Kurog Grimtotem, increasing the power of those specific elemental abilities. So after intermission, you don't want to take him to those totems of the ads you just killed. The Tectonic Crusher is the Earth Altar elemental, and will need to be tank swapped, as each consecutive melee attack against the same target increases the elemental's physical damage by 3%, and this does stack. Ground Shatter applies Earth Circles around random players, and when it expires, it inflicts massive nature damage to anyone within these circles. So you got a mega spread for this one. Violent Upheaval puts large Earth Circles on the ground, don't stand in them because they do a bunch of damage, and knock you back. The Storm Altar ad is Thundering Tempest. All it does is cast Stormbreak onto a random player. This causes it to vanish and then appear behind the targeted player. Then it will start channeling Lethal Current onto the player, which makes them pulsate AoE damage to anyone within 8 yards, as well as makes them take damage for 6 seconds. The Fire Altar ad is called Blazing Fiend. It has a passive buff called Magma Flow that says when it takes damage, it will create lava pools at random locations that inflict fire damage to anyone standing in them every second. Then from these lava pools, another ad called a Smoldering Hellion will spawn, and these will spam cast Flame Bolt onto players. I don't have any good footage of this one because we only triggered this ad once. The Frost Altar ad is the Frozen Destroyer. The effect that just went out is Frostbinds. It deals frost damage to the entire raid, plus puts a dot on the entire raid that deals frost damage every 2 seconds and reduces movement speed by 10%. This effect stacks and is interruptible, so you probably want to interrupt every cast that you can. This is Freezing Tempest. The elemental does massive damage to anyone further than 10 yards, and then less damage, but still a lot of damage, to players within 10 yards. When this starts going off, everyone needs to get within 10 yards of the ad ASAP, or it's a wipe. Now, once you have dealt with these 2 intermissions, I'm assuming Phase 3 starts. My group never got there, but in Phase 3, Kurog Grimtotem casts all his abilities from Stage 1, but faster, and he will be super buffed. So this is probably when you're gonna save Lust for. Stay tuned for more videos like this one and more videos on Preservation Evoker, and thank you for watching.